Welcome to the Thriving Misfits, the podcast where we celebrate resilience, embrace diversity, and challenge norms. I'm your host, Fyiona Yong, and today we're honored to have a very special guest, Emily Tan. Emily is a wellness visionary with over 20 years of experience in health and fitness. She's also a cancer survivor whose journey through early menopause and recovery has shaped her mission to inspire others to define wellness on their own terms. Em's unique perspective isn't just about surviving cancer, but thriving through it, including the often overlooked transition period after the treatment. In this episode, we'll explore the critical role of a social support system in cancer recovery and how friends, family, and communities can better understand and support cancer patients. Em will also share insights on how cancer survivors can articulate their needs during this delicate phase. Whether you're navigating cancer recovery yourself, supporting a loved one, or simply curious about the holistic approach to wellness, this conversation is surely going to leave you feeling enlightened and empowered. So welcome, Em.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you for having me on.
It's so great to get reconnected again. I think the first time that we met was actually in Hong Kong in 2022 or 21 at the TEDx Teen How event, right?
That was 2021. I remember that was just a few months before I moved out of Hong Kong.
Right. Now, your story has inspired me, and I actually started following you way before 2021, because you were very active in the space of aerial, and I myself also had a little bit of a stint in that space since 2021 in Hong Kong. So trying myself out on pole, on aerial silks, and I saw, of course, your videos and how you're connected also with Aerial Arts Academy.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually funny because Hong Kong has definitely been a place of a lot of connections. And I think what I really like about Hong Kong and why I came back to Hong Kong after getting diagnosed was I felt a sense of community there. Even though people might think that community means that you have to be best friends with everyone, perhaps. I definitely thought that at one point, but I soon came to realize that community is really the people that you have had touch points with at some point in life, be it through one thing or another. And somehow, some way, there's something about that person that kept you in the realm of each other. And it just comes to the right time, in a way, the right circumstances that you are brought back together to reconnect.
Oh, yeah. And you talk about community, but also you talk about the role of social environments in cancer recovery. So if you could design an ideal cancer recovery village, what would it look like? How would it foster healing for both the individual and also their support system? I think this is such an important question because also for me, having friends with going through cancer treatment, I would love to hear more what I can do to support them.
Man, you know what? I feel like this is so personal because let's use introverts and extroverts as an example. Introverts are going to be designing it differently than extroverts. Extroverts might design it in a way where can I enhance and recharge my energy in the best way possible. Whereas introverts are like, I need my cave, I need my recharge space, and no one else can be in it. So it really comes down to it. I learned that I'm very much of an introvert with extroverted abilities. So when I'm in a social environment, I definitely get recharged. But I also need that introverted characteristics, design space for me to also recharge, but both in a different way. So if I were able to design it based on what I just described for me, I've always envisioned living on a farm of some sort. I know it sounds cliche, like everyone wants to live on a farm, but living on a farm in some sort because you get access to nature. This farm will have access to nature, have access to animals. But on a farm, you have a lot of land, which means you have the capacity to have a lot of tiny houses and have a little tiny house community with all of your people that you love and people you want to interact with, but have the flexibility of, you know what, I think I need to move 30 feet away. Just let me move my house 30 feet away. Just something like that, something fun like that. And within this community, you have different people who can show up for you in a different way. that you need. What I also learned throughout this process is, well, throughout the journey in being diagnosed, going through cancer treatment, and the year as I was recovering, I felt like I probably unmasked 8 different sides of myself. And I'm sure anyone, even without cancer, you can probably relate. You don't feel like you're just one dimension. You could probably feel like you're multidimensional. And in this space where there is cancer looming over you on both, let's say if you and I were to have a conversation 3 months after my diagnosis, we're having a 3-way conversation. It's me and you and the entity in the middle of what you perceive, how someone experiences cancer, and how I actually experience cancer, but also how I perceive you perceiving experiencing cancer. So it's like a 3-way entity there. And having said that, every person's interaction will be different. So I could set up in a way where one person will bring out the deep, reflective side of me, where I'm not afraid to go deep because I don't feel judged. I'm not afraid to go there and talk about the things like death and loss and getting your affairs in order. To say getting your affairs in order in your early 30s can seem very daunting and really morbid for someone. But if that other person can actually hold that space and be a container for you to have the conversation, it could be very, very healing. And then you have other people who they may not want to go there, but they bring out the playfulness, the inner child in you, the fun aspect in you. But that doesn't mean that they're going to ignore what really sucks during that time, but they're just able to pull that out on you and draw it out on you. And then you have people who might bring out more feminine aspects. And I'm speaking from the experience of a female. Because going through a cancer journey, and depending on the type of cancer and depending on the type of treatment they have to go through, some of us lose hair, some of us lose body parts. Some of us lose parts that are not visible to the external eye. But majority of it, a lot of us lose a sense of identity before a cancer diagnosis. So in grieving all of this loss as a female, sometimes you feel like, am I even a real woman anymore? And then you will have some people who are able to help you stay connected to your essence, because they are so connected to their essence and you don't feel like you have to compensate by or with the conditioning that you've grown up with. I've grown up with a lot of masculine conditioning, being in the world, having to survive from a young age, and being stuck in that survival mode for a long, long time. And if anything, a cancer diagnosis just enhanced and elevated that level. And as with most things, we need a balance. So in terms of designing a village, I started with designing people in this village, because I think it's really the people that makes a village. Naturally, I would like all sorts of doctors and therapists and sexologists and people I can talk to about different things, of course. But yeah, let's start with there.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, from your personal experience, I hope that you had that village around you. How was your personal experience, though?
Dude, I had that in Hong Kong.
You don't mind sharing?
I never knew that I was able to have that in Hong Kong, because I think with Hong Kong, especially most of us who've lived there on a hustle stage in our lives, we go there because we want to move things. We want to start things. We want to build things. We want to expand things. I feel like that's a lot of reasons why people move to Hong Kong, as opposed to people who are born and raised there. And when I came back to Hong Kong, I was in Spain when I was diagnosed. So when I went back to Hong Kong, it almost felt like I'm moving to Hong Kong again for the first time, because everything seemed completely different. Everything was very clouded by the filter of hospital rooms and clinics and blood draws and conversations around that is always about sickness and healing, is always about fixing health problems. So having that scope, it allowed me to almost have a clean slate and be able to be in a state of receiving. That was a time where I actually stopped pursuing in the sense of who am I going to go to, because that opened up the opportunity for people to come to you. People who actually value you and saw that I feel a calling to connect with you, even though we haven't talked every day, even though we're not like best friends prior to this, we didn't hang out every weekend, we didn't go on a junk all the time. But for some reason during that time, that's when they showed up. And that was so beautiful for me to not only witness, but experience firsthand. And I think that also gave me an opportunity to, isn't it? That gave me an opportunity to actually sit with myself. And that's actually the most important company, is to sit with yourself and to look at things as is and not need to judge or label it. And allow yourself to go into the flow.
You had that.
Yeah, it's also, I find it magical. I'm actually currently in my magical stage where I'm tapping into anything that has the word magic in it, or energy flow, or I don't know, just something about that that's been coming up a lot. And when I look back during that time, when I first went back to Hong Kong, I recognized that magic exists in different people, because these different people are actually different vessels who can communicate and exude their energy and what they believe in and how they're connected on a much deeper level that we can't, it's hard to articulate right off the bat, especially when you meet people just like that. It's something that you have to sense, you have to feel. But if you have a door in between that, you're not giving yourself an opportunity to feel. And it felt like at the time I had my doors wide open. But have trust, enough trust that if someone walks in through that door and you don't vibe with that person, trust in yourself that it's okay that I say no. It's okay that I let it go.
I love that you say that, because that resonates so well with me. And I think this calls for another episode with you where we're going to talk about magic and manifestation and energy and vibes, because I do believe in that, right? Like, you don't have to force yourself to be friends with someone if the vibes are just off, and you can feel it, right? And you will attract the right people into your life at that time when you need them the most, even the most negative persons, right? Because they're there in our lives to teach us a lesson. I think that's what I believe in.
Dude, yes. Yes.
Now, you as a cancer survivor, right? You have now stepped back probably in your careers, or at least in your social life. Do you have any practical advice that you can give other cancer survivors so that they can regain their confidence back and also establish that sense of balance?
I love the timing of this. I'm actually working on a video right now on my YouTube channel on how to trust yourself again. Because on a deeper level, whether you're single and you want to come out dating again, whether you are jobless right now, which I had no income in the first 2 years of battling cancer. I had no income. If it wasn't for people's donations, I really don't know how I would have gotten through it. And jumping back into the workforce is such an irony in the way. It's like an oxymoron, because essentially the hustle and the ambitions and the aspirations and how you set up your work environment was, let's not deny it, a contributing factor to getting ill, to getting sick. Having been through all of that, is that something that you want to jump right back into? So I think what I'll premise this with is, before going into how to get back in and being kind of caught up with, give me all the strategies, how to get back in, can we sit back and actually ask ourselves, what exactly do we want to get back into? Is it the identity that you want to get back into? Or is it actually the work environment that you thrived in? Is it the social aspect? Is it because it drove and drew out so much of your ambitions and that's who you want to be? Could this be a moment where you reflect, is that still where I want to go? Is that path, like, now you have an opportunity to really take a chance to pivot and to change your mind, and no one can give you anything about that. No one can say jack about it. You have permission now to rewrite where you want to go. You have permission now to redecide what is it you want to create within the next year, within the next 2 years, within the next 5 years. And if you were to change your path 6 months down the line, 3 years down the line, it is completely okay, because now you are the only one who can say, that's okay, that's where I want to go. So first step in trusting yourself is really getting to know yourself again and giving yourself permission to write a new identity. Because whether we want to or not, the old identity is gone. So that's number one.
Absolutely. I think that that's so important to also like put things in perspective. I think going through something so severe, a major illness like cancer, definitely shapes you and you see the world very much differently. You don't want to join in the rat race anymore, right?
No more, no more. I got a hall pass to exit. I'm taking it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much to life than that. And I think having gone through something so tremendous, it just, it just opens your eyes to other opportunities or other possibilities out there in order to make money or in order to just survive and thrive, right?
Absolutely. You know, for the longest time, I thought that I wanted to expand in the fitness industry. I wanted to be this presenter. I wanted to be this speaker. I wanted to be a thought leader and all of that. And it wasn't until I really had the opportunity right before cancer to fulfill that, I realized like this feels empty. This actually isn't what I envisioned how it would feel like. Because what our ego actually wants and aspires to be can be so disconnected to where we feel aligned and where we feel like our purpose could be. And having moments and checkpoints and being able to slow down and listen to be able to hear the whispers that are whispered to you, that can give you so much more information about yourself than going to any experts, going to any business coach or business strategist. And I think a lot of times we give up our power and autonomy to others who don't know us the way we do. I think people with expertise come in at the right time, but you have to do the groundwork first. And the groundwork is within you and if you're willing to go deep enough.
Yeah, for sure.
And once you take that first step, that will guide you in the next step and the next step. And then it's time to like, let me find a business strategist now. Now is the right time.
I mean, it always starts with self-discovery, right? You need to understand yourself first, what you truly want, and then move forward. And I like that you mentioned about ego, right? Do we want to be a thought leader? Do we want to be an influencer? Like what is it for actually? And I think going through such a tremendous change or hurdle in your life will definitely open your eyes towards whether or not it's truly your ego speaking, or is it something that you want to bring out into the world to make a difference, right?
I also find it fascinating that why is it inherently that a lot of us might have a bit of a grapple with our ego? Maybe it's easy to assume that the ego is bad or the ego is negative and the ego is inauthentic. But I don't know. I kind of believe that ego is a part of us no matter what. But we definitely have the power to shape how that ego can be. And what if we're friends with that ego and the ego can be something that serves as a reminder in a way, like, hey, remember this? Do you still want this? You don't? Okay, fine. I'll come back to you with another idea. You know,
and I think it's also about like, why do you want this, right? I think that question is like, why do you want this? And this is something that, I mean, we talked about social media and it's such an important platform for us to also have our voices there. But then again, it's also asking, I always ask myself, like, why am I putting this content out there? Like, who is it for? Is it for me or is it for others as well? I think having that question to ourselves, you know, via the ego or just, you know, our consciousness, I think is so important.
What you said there reminded me of something, and that was, I've always been active on social media for business purposes. Like for work, I've always used it for work. And when I first got diagnosed, I had a fleeting thought of, I'm just going to go MIA. I'm going to go off the grid. I'm going to not talk to anyone. And then I'm going to come back and be like, oh, actually, I was busy. And then I realized like a voice just tapped in and went, you know, there's a reason why you didn't know anything about leukemia. Even when the doctor told me leukemia, I was actually wondering, isn't that like a child's disease or something? Yeah. You know, I didn't know it was blood cancer. And for someone in the fitness industry to not know what leukemia was, I felt so ashamed of myself. But in that moment, I realized I can't be the only one. Come on, I can't be the only one who only focus on how you train and how you eat in the kitchen and call it fitness. I can't be the only one. So if I have access to social media and if I'm willing, could I now use my experience and use my journey in this most raw form to help inform others. If they are interested, they will come to you. They will tune in. If they're not interested, they'll swipe, they'll scroll, they'll swipe. Doesn't matter. But showing up in your way, in that way, actually became a way that I process things. If you're a writer, if you're someone who process through journaling or through maybe conversations with people, I believe this is such an incredible outlet for you to process your thoughts, your feelings. And through the act of articulation, through writing and through conversation, it's therapeutic for ourselves.
It's great to hear. And I definitely followed you on their social media just to understand a little bit more what you're going through and what other cancer patients are going through. So definitely lots of information, and it's very insightful. So thanks for doing that. I personally didn't have that energy when I went through my miscarriages. I just didn't have the energy to be on social media. And even as an extrovert, I was just doing my MBTI recently, once again, and I was like 88% extroverted. But in that moment, I just felt like I wanted to hide in my shell, and I just didn't want to talk to anyone. And it just changed me. So it's definitely great to see individuals like yourself being so strong in those moments to help to advocate for that and also inform others so that, we have a better understanding. So, as you know, I work a lot with companies, with multinationals, and a lot of them are trying to create a more inclusive work environment. But I still think that workplaces often lack that sort of understanding or even policies to support individuals recovering from major illnesses like cancer. What changes would you want to advocate for in order to make the workplace much more inclusive and also supportive?
I had to hold in a cough, sorry.
No worries.
So hopefully the editor knows that this is the part to edit.
Are you okay?
Oh, yeah. I haven't taken my medication for my lungs yet. It's been a few months, so I need to get back to the pharmacy to do that. About the workplace, going back to the workplace, I had my opportunity to visit actually several workplaces when I was going back into work before 2020, as we know what happened in 2020, and after 2020. I realized that this is similarities I notice. I noticed that there is almost an unset expectation for someone to bounce back after something major that they had to go through in their body. I can't speak from having children. You have to speak from that. And I can only imagine the grapple within yourself. Like, I should be able to bounce back. I should be able to do this. I used to be able to do this so well. Why can't I do this now? What is wrong? Something's not right. So these are all the self-talk that it's so common and so normal for us to go through. And that is the one thing that I can maybe link it to when it comes to recovering from cancer. And cancer recovery looks so different for everyone because it all depends on where you started on the baseline and how far your treatment is. Because some people don't ever actually get off medication. Some people have lifetime medication to be on. And with most medication, you have side effects. Having said that, I think when it comes to designing a workplace from the top, that is to look into, can I have a one-to-one conversation first with this person and get to know what exactly are your needs and how exactly would you like to kind of navigate the ups and downs, the ebbs and flow of your recovery back. But to have some sort of structure, break it down into quarters. Most companies work in quarters anyway. In Q1, we're going to start off with remote working and 10 hours, 20 hours. Q2, let's reassess and see how much more you want to come in. Do you want to come in the office once a week, twice a week? But all comes down to the type of work as well. And that's the beauty of redesigning your work environment when you come in, because there's so many factors now that you can plug into. And I think it's very cool also for some enterprises now and some businesses, they want to tap into connecting deeper on the wellness level with their employees, with their team. Might this even be an opportunity for you to bring that person who is currently still battling cancer recovery, bring them in and do a team building exercise, do a team sharing exercise. Because in that way, it is not just a relationship between the boss and the staff, not a relationship between the top and the person coming back into the workforce. It is now building camaraderie within the whole department, within the whole team, coming in to have a little story exchange and get that person to reconnect. Because as much as I say now that sometimes you have to navigate how much energy you come back in with, for people who actually get a lot more energy out of extrovert and also work environments, that can be the catalyst to enhancing your recovery. When you are coming back in and you feel so welcome, not judged, because we are our worst critics. We judge ourselves enough. We don't give ourselves enough slack. So why don't we set up our team to be compassionate with each other and let that be contagious in that sense, and let that be an inspiration for everyone to also bring in what they believe can be healing in their own way. It's not now just focused on the person who fought cancer. It is now also a permission slip for everyone else who are going through something tough in their lives.
Yes. And I think this needs to be more visible, right? Like we usually hear about stories from, let's say, female professionals who made it up there in a very male dominated environment. Or now we're, of course, seeing a lot in terms of like the pride movement in the workplace, or even people with disabilities, really embracing neurodiversity in the workplace. I think what we could do even better is to showcase examples of individuals who are willing to share, obviously, but to showcase that it is okay if you're going through a major illness, and we're there for you even after that. And that actually reminds me of the conversation I had with one of my other friends. We had a podcast episode recording as well. And we talked about eating disorder recovery. So I was actually sharing that I battled through an eating disorder for about 20 years, 2 decades. And one of the reasons why I felt that I couldn't recover, or I was kind of questioning whether I could ever recover, is because I was working in a company that's really great, really inclusive and everything. But what would it look like if I would then tell my boss or even HR that I'm going through an eating disorder and I would like to recover? If I need to be hospitalized, would I come back and get back my job? So all of these things. And I think we need to make it much more visible in the workplace, that to showcase also that there are examples, that there are people going through that as well. And then making it much more accessible, to just raise our hands to say that, hey, I'm actually going through that as well. And, I know that my company, or I know that my colleagues, my managers are going to be supportive. So I think I love what you mentioned, and I think we need to showcase and make it much more visible in the workplace.
How would you do that? Because it actually reminds me of the time when I was in Queen Mary Hospital, and I had walked past another room, and I saw this lady. She was all hooked up on, bags and IVs and stuff, and she was on her computer and she was like concentrating. And then I was talking to the nurse, and the nurse said, "Yeah, she's also going through what you're going. She also has chemo, but she's working. She brought her work as she's doing chemo." And at the time I was wondering, this is a lot of love and passion and dedication to what you're doing. Either that, or the other thing is like the action stems from fear. From fear of, I can't lose this identity. I can't lose this job. I can't lose what I have right now that keeps me going. And there's the fear of not being supported. There's a fear of not being understood. There's a fear of not being accepted because of this thing that makes you feel weak. So how would you make this more visible?
I think it's just about sharing people's stories, their personal stories, how it's like to go through that, and creating awareness in the workplace, right? Like as colleagues also, how can we build up our compassion towards someone who is ill and who needs to go to the hospital on a regular basis without feeling that, oh, that person is not pulling their weight, right? So I think it's about education. It's about creating that awareness by sharing real life stories with one another. And we do that actually when it comes to gender equity. We do share stories of women who made it up there, how they went through their struggles, how they faced adversities, and how they thrive through those challenges. So I think we can also showcase these real life scenarios and make it much more visible, and just creating that awareness for everyone else around.
And sometimes with creating awareness, we have to jump on social media to do that. So
Yes.
it comes down in a way in the back loop of, why am I showing up on Instagram right now? Oh yeah, it was because of that.
That's
And
right.
that
Yes.
will not be prominent unless we do the exercise and the practice of getting to know, why am I doing this? And does
Yes.
this still feel aligned?
Yeah. Now we talk about the physical recovery, which I guess you have mastered that now.
No, gosh,
and
I don't know about master that, but I do the best I can, right? As we all are.
now we also need to talk about the emotional and also the relational recovery. What are some of the ways cancer survivors can do to reconnect with themselves and also their loved ones, especially after the treatment? Because we talked about it's not just during the treatment, but actually post-treatment. What is it that they can do for themselves introspectively? You know, how can they emotionally recover, but also how can they reconnect with their loved ones?
I think for those who never felt a disconnection from their loved ones are definitely the lucky ones and the very privileged ones. So if you happen to be one of those people, please share your love. And then secondly, if there hasn't been an opportunity to reconnect with a loved one, because some of us live abroad, some of us were diagnosed abroad and may not have the opportunity to travel home. They can only rely on their family traveling over to them, but that comes with financial constraint. So all things considered, come back to the basic. Come back to the basic of how you can connect with a loved one. Text messages, social media, calls, video calls. And you know what? I discovered a new relationship. Now that Instagram Reels has something called Reels, you can send reels to each other. You can send memes to each other, send jokes to each other. And sometimes that can be the best way to stay connected, because now you are associating connection and conversation with that person with something that makes you smile, something that makes you laugh, something that gives you 30 seconds of respite from the day, because the day, 90% of your thoughts are revolved around how your health is, how sick you are, how you're going to make life work again. And having that bit of a break essentially is what keeps you open to connection, regardless of where the connection is, near or far. So I think that's definitely one thing. And in terms of, I call it the aftercare of cancer treatment and also cancer recovery, because we may think of after treatment as in, oh, that's your last chemotherapy day or your last radiation day. You're done. Actually, you also have like 12 to 18 months, maybe more of recovery time from all of that intense drugs going into your system, intense poisonous toxic stuff going into your system. You need time for the body to detox. You need time for the brain to also come back to its regular working state, I'll call it that, and allowing yourself a period of time where you give yourself a lot of grace. And if we need some guidance during this time, I think this is actually the perfect time. I actually used to skip the self-help aisle in the bookstore because I never really believed that I needed that until after cancer. And even 3 months after my diagnosis, I walked into a clinical psychologist's office and she asked me, what's your therapy goal? And I had no idea. I gave her nothing. I literally told her, I actually don't know. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here. Some reason I'm here. And at the end of that first session, I walked out with a big gaping question for myself that I actually felt so curious to start answering. And if you're someone who has an innate curiosity with you, I think this could be an opportunity to share what has been on your mind for X amount of time with someone who is professionally and also with experience able to hold that container for you. So this could be a chance of self-discovery. And knowing that this is your period of self-discovery, who would you like to invite to this party? You don't have to reconnect with everyone that you've been connected with But now you can pick and choose who's going to be in that tribe. We're talking about expanding your tribe and regrowing your tribe. And this reminds me of the episode that you did with Nadia on your other episode from Malaysia Rare Disorder Society. And
Yes.
she mentioned something about you can't go into things alone. You have to find your tribe. This is the opportunity for you to design your tribe. But before designing your tribe, you have to get really, really clear about what is it you are willing to tolerate and what is it that you are not going to tolerate anymore. Because by understanding what your needs are, then you can, in a way, advertise those needs to the people you are inviting to your tribe and see if you can help each other and support each other through that phase. And that's what makes, I think, aftercare so much more effective when both parties are actually clear with each other. And even if you're not clear in the beginning, this is an opportunity to get clear, to gain clarity. But you have to be open to it.
Absolutely. No, I can already tell that you're such a resilient individual. But I'm sure that there were some intentional habits that you had, or maybe some resilience practices that really play a huge role in your recovery. Can you share a few of those? And also, how can others cultivate these in their lives?
Okay. When it comes to habits, the first one that came up for some reason is emotion. Because we think of habits, or at least I used to think of habits as things that you do physically. Until I realized actually habits could stem from our thought habits, our thought patterns, our thinking pattern that has been conditioned for a long, long, long time that it feels like it's your identity. And to stop that is the hardest thing. But for any habit to really sink in and to make any habit last, it really starts from our willingness to think about that habit and what that relates to us. So when it comes to habits, I think it could go in parallel. Pick something that you could ritualize out of. For example, I now started using matcha, the process of making matcha a ritual. So I'm not using the electric whisk. I'm doing the bamboo whisk. I'm taking my time, sifting it through. And it may sound like, okay, she's just another matcha fan, whatever, right? But it's the ability to look at something so mundane, look at something so simple, and be able to turn that into a moment of, this is actually the time where I could think about my day and think about where I want to be and set my intention for the day. I don't need to get up at 5 a.m. to meditate for an hour, because some people think that's what habits are, successful habits. If you don't have that ability or the capacity in your life design to wake up at 5 a.m. to have 2 hours to yourself, give yourself a minute, 60 seconds of making a matcha. And that 60 seconds can slowly take over your system. And every drop of that 60 seconds gets your body to recondition in another way. And over time, and I think that's also some of the teachings from Dr. Joe Dispenza and other experts like Dispenza, who teach you how to tap into the sensation and the state of being that you envision that you want to experience. And the more practice that you do, the more your body stops to reject it, the more your body opens to accept it, and the more you're able to allow and see opportunities and where you can invite it. So before we go into the doing of habits, we could go into the acknowledging our emotions as is, accept it, but then make a conscious decision. What do I want to feel instead? And can I try to feel that right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I love that you mentioned Joe Dispenza. I'm a huge fan as well. And we talk about resilience practices. And I think this is an intentional habit that you've built. It's just really that there is this intention, right? Like this is the time for you to be mindful, for you to be present. Has spirituality played a role in your recovery or even during the treatment?
In a very big part that I did not expect. Now, for someone who grew up in a Christian household, going to Sunday school, even though I skipped most of it and refused to wear a dress, you can already tell that there's a bit of a grapple growing up, a bit of a struggle growing up in that Christian upbringing. But I stopped practicing my faith when I experienced an unwanted pregnancy and had to go through a pregnancy termination at the age of 15. And that was when I felt so much guilt so like I didn't think I deserved to live to that point where I considered taking my own life. And that was when I stopped practicing my faith. And over time, I think we also now get to look back on hindsight. Oh, that is why I chose my first husband and he was an atheist. I was trying to confirm somebody's really deep decision on how I saw myself. And it wasn't until I was laying in bed on the first day of chemotherapy where I felt myself surrender. And it was only through a thought of, have I lived a good life? Have I lived a life that I want to live? And I remember that answer, it was such a deep embodiment of yes. I said yes to so many things, even though there were heartbreaks. We end up in divorce and so many things that, yeah, you could choose to see how wrong it went, but you could also choose to see how much experience and wisdom and fun and living that you got from all of those yeses. And in that moment, that was when I said, I can surrender. Whether the chemo works or not, I surrender this healing. And that was the moment I tapped back into a spiritual practice. And even though I used my upbringing with religion as a way to tap into a spiritual practice, that was pretty much like the first step into deepening a practice that goes beyond religious practices. And I think it's important for us to also make that distinction in how some people see spirituality and religious practices. Because for some people who are not connected with that, they might have switched off by now and be like, talking about God again. Whatever. But having a spiritual practice doesn't mean that you have to talk to God. It just means that you have to connect with something that you don't see within yourself, something that you have to practice the faith of belief. And sometimes that is the essential practice of resilience. Resilience isn't David Goggins. David Goggins is not textbook of resilience. He is definitely a textbook of grit. I'll give you that. But that doesn't work for everyone.
Yes.
Sometimes resilience is quiet. Sometimes resilience is in the silence. Can you hold yourself in that silence?
I mean, when we focus on spirituality, I like that you mentioned it's not about religion, right? It goes so much deeper. It's about believing. It's the power of belief. And I think those people who are going through a severe illness, they need that, right? To hold on to. It's something that's bigger than them. And I think spirituality, again, another topic that we probably have to discuss more deeper on. And it's definitely something that I want to explore further with you. But in terms of this particular topic, cancer, surviving cancer, surviving or even like post-cancer recovery. So what is it like? What is that key message that you want to put out there, whether it's for cancer patients, cancer survivors, or their loved ones, or society at large? What is that one key message that you want to amplify?
I think what I keep coming back to, and I've experimented with this thought experiment for quite many years, it comes back down to you find a way back to yourself. It's journeying back to yourself. And journeying back to yourself doesn't mean that you come back to your identity and your ego before a cancer diagnosis or before a major health challenge. It comes back to your core, to your essence, like going deeper than your values. What is deeper than your values? Are you okay being just being? And if you can go to that place, I think the recovery and rebuilding yourself back in this material world can be so much more exciting.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for tuning in to this heartfelt episode of the Thriving Misfits. So Emily, your insights have been truly eye-opening for me, from understanding the unspoken needs of cancer patients to highlighting the vital role of social environments in recovery. You've shed a light on a topic that touches so many lives, yet is often overlooked, especially in the workplace, I believe. So to everyone listening, whether you're navigating cancer yourself, supporting a loved one, or simply just want to build a more compassionate community, I hope this conversation has inspired you to show up, listen, and engage in meaningful ways. Emily, before we go, can you share where our listeners can connect with you or learn more about your work?
Thank you. I am most active right now on YouTube and Instagram. I'm actually working on building something for exactly people who have just gone through a whole cancer journey and coming back to themselves and learning how to reconnect with their essence, especially if they're women, reconnect with their feminine essence and recreating a life that you actually feel excited about. So yeah, I'm excited to share about that too.
That's wonderful. So thank you once again, Emily, for your courage, wisdom, and advocacy. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation. So until the next time, keep on thriving, Misfits.